to our What's the Phone series. It's your boy Osas, and in today's episode, we are going to be building our custom audio player. As you can see in the completed version of our project, we can actually play our voice messages directly from our Bubble Audio view without having to present a media player component. And I'm going to demonstrate that really quickly. So when we click on this play button right here.
Welcome to the SwiftUI channel, where we build cool, complex iOS applications in SwiftUI and UIKit.
As you can see, we can play the voice message, we could rewind it, we could fast forward it, and we could scroll while the voice message is actually still playing. This is a very cool functionality, which is quite similar to the actual WhatsApp application on the App Store. And obviously, we're going to have to build out some sort of a custom audio player using AVKit and AV Foundation to make that happen. So let us jump right into Xcode and get started with our functionality. So the core focus is to create some sort of a voice message player, inject our voice message player into our Bubble Audio view, and be able to control that voice message player from inside of our Bubble Audio view. So I'm going to go right ahead and create inside of our chat folder, right underneath of our chat room view model. I'm going to create another file, and I am going to go ahead and call it voice message player. I think that's a pretty good name and it's descriptive enough. Okay, so I'm going to make this a final class, voice message player, and I think I'm going to make it an observable object. And the reason I'm making it an observable object is because, as you see in the demo that we just made, right, we're actually able to listen to the playback state, right, and we're able to rewind and fast forward our actual audio message. And in order for us to be able to react to those changes, we want to be able to treat this voice message player like it's some sort of a view model. So we want to have a couple of published properties inside of it. So what do we want this voice message player to do? Well, first, we want it to have some sort of a player. So I'm going to go right ahead and define a player. Right, I'm going to say voice player, or we could just say player, honestly. And player is going to be our AV player. We're going to make it optional. And let's see, it's probably going to yell at us because we need to import AV Foundation. Okay, what else do we need? Well, we need a couple of functions. We need some sort of a play function. So I'm going to go right ahead and create a play audio function. And I'm going to say from URL, which is going to be of type URL. I'm also going to go ahead and create a pause function, right? A pause method. So I'm going to say pause audio. Or we could say pause voice message. It doesn't really matter. What else do we want? Well, that's actually one more thing. We want a seek method. So the seek method is what allows us to be able to drag this slider right here and actually fast forward and rewind our Bubble Audio view. So let's create this seek method, and we're going to say seek to, right? Where do we want to fast forward or rewind to? It's going to be time interval. And it's going to be of time interval, right? That's the parameter. The next thing we need to do now is to start actually setting up our functionalities. So for us to play an audio, of course, we need to initialize the actual audio player. So I'm going to go right ahead and create a couple of more properties. We need the URL when we initialize this voice message player, right? We need some sort of a current URL. So whenever we get this play audio method, whenever we trigger this play audio method, I would like for us to set a audio URL inside of our property or inside of our class here. So I'm going to create another private method, but I'm going to say private var, let's see, current URL, which is, the current voice message that we're currently playing. And I suppose we could call it current voice message, but I think current URL is okay. So what do we want to do? Well, we're going to say the current URL is equals to our URL that is coming from this play audio method, right? That's the first step. The next step I would like for us to do is to declare some sort of an AV player item. So AV players require an AV player item, and that is the item of the current audio or video that we're currently playing. And in this case, it's an audio because we're dealing with voice messages. So I'm going to say let player item is of type AV player item. And AV player item can be constructed from a URL, as you can see. So I'm going to pass in the URL that's coming directly from our parameter up here, okay? And also, let's actually store this player item as a property inside of our class as well. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to create, let's see, what do we want to do? I'm going to create a player item. So I'm going to say private var player item is going to be of type AV player item. I'm going to make this optional as well. And now I'm going to say self.player item, right, is equals to this player item. So I'm setting the property inside of our voice message class to be equals to this player item that we just created inside of our play audio method. So with that being done, let us also store the player that we're going to create. So let's create a player. Let's initialize our player, So I'm going to say player, right, is equals to AV player. AV player, we're going to use the AV player item, the one that has a player item initializer. And I'm going to pass in this player item that we just created inside of our method. Okay. And then I'm going to go right ahead and say player.play. That looks pretty good to me. The next thing I'm going to do is to set up a couple of things. So once we click on this play button inside of our Bubble Audio view, right, it makes sense for us to actually have some sort of an enum that represents the current state of our voice message player. So how do we know if we are currently playing or if we have paused the voice message player? So for me to do that, I'm going to go down here and actually create an extension on our voice message player. So I'm going to say extension, voice message player, and let's see, what do I want? Let us create an enum. I'm going to call this enum playback states. I think that's a pretty good intuitive name. And we're going to have 3 cases. So the first case is going to be stopped. The second state is going to be playing. And the third state is going to be paused. I think that looks pretty good. Okay. And let us jump right up here and then let us jump right up here and then set up our playback state. So right above our play audio function, I'm going to create another private property. This one is going to be called playback states. I'm going to say playback states is equals to our playback state dot stopped. So the initial property is, of course, not playing, right? And I don't know if stopped is a good name. I think that's good. So I'm going to default that to stopped upon initialization. So right here, where we're initializing and playing our voice message player, well, I'm going to trigger the playback states. I'm going to set it to playing, which makes sense, right? And the next thing I would like for us to do is to set up a couple of properties that actually allows us to be able to track the current play duration. So as you can see, when we play the bubble audio view again, you see we have this current duration timer right here. And this is actually what lets us slide our slider right here. And I'm going to demonstrate that again really quickly. As you can see, the slider is actually animating. So in order for us to do that, we need some sort of a current time observer. Thankfully, AV players have this properties that allows us to be able to know the current duration of the audio or video that we're currently playing. And for us to do that, let us create a couple of properties for us to store that. So let's go ahead and create a current time. I'm going to say private var current time. And current time is going to be, let's see, I'm going to say cmtime.0. Okay. And what else do I want? Well, now I'm going to go down here and create a couple of private methods. So let me add a marker here just for cleaner readable code. I'm going to say private methods. And the first private method I want to create is a method that's going to allow us to listen to the current, play duration. So I'm going to say private func observe current player time. I think that's a good name. And in order for me to do that, I'm going to say player.add periodic time observer. As you can see, it requests the periodic invocation of a given block. The TLDR is going to let us know the current duration in our audio player. So what do we want? I'm going to do .cmtime, and I'm going to initialize the one that has the seconds and preferred timescale parameters. So for seconds, we're going to do 1, and for timescale, we're also going to do 1. As far as the queue, we're going to do it on the dispatch main, which is the main queue. And for the using, we're just going to click enter. It's going to return us the current time. So I prefer the trailing closure syntax. I'm going to go right ahead and remove that and just close this out. And there we go. So this is going to return us. Let us first create a weak self using capture list. And right in here, it's going to return us the current time. So I'm going to pass on the time, right? And we can go ahead and actually print it. But for now, let us just store this time. We're going to say our current time is equals to this time, the current duration of the audio player. So with that being set up, I'm going to go right ahead and call this method inside of our play audio function. So I'm going to say observe current player time. Okay, so with our observation set up, it also makes sense for us to actually store this periodic time observer somewhere so we're able to clean up after ourselves when we're done playing the actual voice message. And I'm going to do that by using a private property that I'm going to call current time observer. So just like the name denotes, the current time observer is going to help us, have a handle on this periodic time observer closure right here, this block that is currently firing. And so I'm going to store it right in there. And we're going to use this later on. You're going to see it in the deinitialization process for us to clear down our audio player. So we have that set up. Okay, that's good progress. The next thing I want us to do is let us flush out the pause functionality. In order for us to pause, all we have to do is just say player.pause, right? And playback states I'm just going to say playback states is paused, right? Okay, that's perfect. What about the seek when we're fast forwarding and rewinding the voice message? For us to fast forward and rewind the voice message, all we have to do is to get the target time that we're trying to fast forward or rewind to. And that is going to be of type CM time, right? Which is just the time that we use when we're dealing with AV players. And I'm going to say seconds and preferred time scale again. And I'm going to pass in the time interval is the seconds, right? That we're trying to fast forward or rewind to. And the preferred time scale is going to be 1. And I'm just going to say player.seek. AV players have the seek method on them. And I'm just going to say seek to the target time. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. And let me go right ahead and actually unwrap our AV player inside of here. So I'm going to say player is equals to player And again, by this player, we're referring to the AV player that's going to be playing our voice messages. So let me remove this optional right here. So if there's no player initialized, we don't even need to be able to fast forward or rewind it. So with the seek functionality set up, I think the next step in our equation is to actually also set up something that's going to allow us to listen for when the audio player has reached the end of the play. So I'll show you what I mean. Let's say we click on this, bubble audio view, and when we play this voice message, when it gets to the end of the voice message, we need to be able to listen to some sort of a notification that lets us know that, the audio player is done playing. So that way we can reset all of our controls to the end. And here's what that looks like.
Channel where we build cool, complex iOS application using SwiftUI and UIKit.
As you can see, when it reached the end of the duration, which was 9 seconds, it resets the slider back to 0. It changed the play button from play, right? From playing, which is this pause icon, it changes back to the play button. And so let's go right ahead and set that up. And the way we're going to do that is we're actually just going to create another observer down here. And let's see, what's a good name for this? I'm going to call it observe end of playback. I think that's a good name. Yeah, sure. That sounds descriptive. And we're going to use the notification center. And the notification center is, of course, a singleton, so we're going to use a default. And we're going to use an add observer. And let's see, we want an observer that has a name. That's not the one we want. I'm going to say add observer for name. Yep. And the name we're looking for is the AV player did end to play time. I think that's did play to the end. AV player did play to end. So did play to end notification. So I'm going to look for that version. Did play. So it's saying there's a new version of this. AV player did play to end. And it says we should do AV player item. Okay, so I'm going to say AV player item dot did play to end. Why is that not showing up? Did play to end notification. Perfect. A notification system that posts when the player item plays to the end of its time. That's exactly what we're looking for. And for the object, I'm just going to say it's the player dot current time. Okay, so AV players have a current time property. And then for the queue, we're going to do it on the main queue as well. And I'm going to use the trailing closure syntax. So I'm going to remove the using, and I'm going to use a capture list to prevent any, retain cycle and break any memory leaks. And the next thing we want to do is, so when we're done reaching the end of the audio player, why is this yellow at us? So yeah, we need to put an underscore right there. We need to put an underscore right after the weak self because we don't care about the property that is posted. So when we actually reach the end of the audio, what do we want to do? Why is this? Hold on. Oh, it's right here. Underscore here. Weak self. Oh, no. Yeah. It's underscore here. Sometimes I get these syntaxes confused, and I don't need an underscore here. Let me just go right ahead and rewrite this. I'm going to say weak self, right? And let's see. And now I should stop yelling. So when we get to the end of an actual playback item, as you can see, we need to reset everything back to 0. So in order for us to do that, let us go ahead and create another private method that is going to help us reset our playback. And I'm just going to go right below here, and I'm going to create a private method called, let's see, what's a good name? Stop audio. And what is stop audio going to do for us? Well, we're going to say player.pause, right? And then we're going to say player.seek to. Is going to ask to where we're trying to seek it to. Well, we're trying to seek it to the beginning, which is just 0. And we're going to change the playback state to stopped. And we're going to change the current time back to 0. So this is essentially going to stop the audio player for us. And we're going to call the stop audio player method inside. I'm going to say stop audio player. Inside of here, I'm going to say self.stop audio player. Okay. That looks pretty good to me. So where do we want to call this observe end of playback method? I'm going to call it inside of this play method as well. So essentially, when we hit that play button, we're going to set up our AV player, right? We're going to set up the playback states. We're going to listen for the current timer. So that way we can display the duration of the audio player. And then when the player is done playing, we're going to use this observe end of playback method to clear the audio player. So that looks pretty good to me. And if you're curious about how all of this works, we can add a bunch of print statements in here so we could just see what's going on. So I'm going to put a print statement right there, and I'm going to put a print statement in here. And I'm going to change this to observe end of playback. And for this one, let us put the time because this is going to be firing a time. Okay, so that looks pretty good to me. So what else do we want to do? Well, I would also like for us to remove, so we have all these observers, right? We have this current time observer, and it makes sense for us to actually remove it when we're done playing a voice message or when we're done leaving the chat room screen. So I'm going to create a remove observer method. Remove observer, or it should be observers, I think plural. And how am I going to do this? Well, I'm going to say player.remove time observer, and it's going to ask for an observer. So I'm going to use the current time observer, but let us go ahead and unwrap it first. So I'm going to say current time observer, else return out of the scope because there's nothing to remove. right? And remember, we're setting this current time observer right here, right? We're saying this player, this playback timer is basically tied to this current time observer. So how are we going to use this, current time observer? First off, let us default it to nil here. I'm going to say self, the current time observer is nil. Okay, this periodic observer. So when we remove it from the player, we're going to nil it. And now with that done, let me also put a print statement here just so we see what we're doing when we test it inside of our UI. I'm going to say remove observers fired. I think that's a good one. So where are we going to call this remove observers method? Well, let us go ahead and call it in our deinitializer block. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to create a deinit block, and I'm just going to say, remove periodic remove observers. So anytime we deinitialize this message player, I want us to remove all of these observers that are listening to our audio player timer. So with that setup, I think we have the bulk of everything we need. Is there anything else that we want to do? Actually, you know what? Let's set up a proper tear down method. So this only removes the periodic time observer. We should have another method that actually tears down everything. So I'm going to go right down here, and I'm going to create a tear down method. Tear down. And what is this tear down method going to do? Well, it's going to remove the observers, and then let us nail the player. And what else? We have a player item. Let us nail that as well. Let us go right ahead and set the current URL to nil as well. So let us call this tear down inside of our deinit block instead of just the remove observers. So the tear down one is a better one because it removes all of the AV player item, and the current URL that we are actually playing. And I think that looks like the bulk of the work that we need to do. The next thing that I would like for us to do is to also have some sort of a resume player functionality. So for example, when we click on, let's see, let me show you what I mean. So in the completed version of the project, as you see, we're 1 second into our voice message. When we pause it and when we click on play, it resumes from where we paused it or where we stopped it the last time.
Welcome to the SwiftUI channel.
As you can see, it stops. When we click play again, it starts from the last, from 3 seconds.
Where we build cool, complex.
Look at that, resumes. Okay, so obviously we have not handled that because our play audio functionality, our play audio method right now always sets everything back to 0, right? And because it's always initializing a new AV player. And of course, let us go ahead and fix that. And the way we're going to fix that pretty quickly is, let's think about it. All we need to do is check if the current URL is not nil, right? The current voice URL, or the current voice message URL. If it's not nil, then that means we've obviously initialized this play audio method or this voice message class already. And so I'm going to say if let's current URL, right? If it's equals to current URL, meaning it's not nil. And I'm also going to say if the current URL is equals to the URL that's passed in here, because think about it, right? If you click on this play button, if you go and click on a different play button, I don't want to play the same voice message. I want to play a different voice message. As you can see, it plays a totally different voice message, right? And it resets this one. So it makes sense for us to make sure that it is the same voice message URL that we're dealing with. So I'm saying if the current URL is equals to the current URL, this unwraps it. And then I'm saying if that current URL is equals to this same play audio URL, this, the one that we're passing into this method, then that means it's the same voice message. And we need to do something like resume playing voice message, something like that. Resume playing. I think that's a good name, right? And so we don't have any function called resume playing yet. Let us go right ahead and create that. And this is also going to be a private method, to be honest. I'm just going to scroll down here and I'm going to create a private func resume playing. And resume playing is just going to do two things for us. It's going to do, player.play, which makes sense. And it's also going to change the playback states. I'm going to say playback states is equals to playing. And what else do I want to do? Well, I would like for us to do a little bit of checks. So I'm going to say if playback states is equals to paused, or if the playback state is equals to stopped. Okay? If it's any of those two, then of course we're going to do player.play and playback state the resume playing. So let us go up here and see what else we need to fix. Well, we need to add this entire logic inside of the else block here because we don't want it to fire. We only want it to fire if it's a new voice message that we're trying to play. So this actually plays the voice message. And this resumes a previous voice message that we were already playing. So a previous voice message that we're already playing, but we decided to pause or stop. So I think this looks like everything we need for our voice message player. And let us go right ahead and actually create the other components inside of our bubble audio view that is going to allow us to be able to actually handle this fast forward and rewind functionality. So it looks like this episode is getting a little bit longer than I would like it to be. So I would wrap up this episode right here. But in the next episode, we are actually going to bind our voice message player to our bubble audio view components as we see in the completed version of the project. So that should be exciting. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Please like and subscribe as always. Peace.